Get it popping in a second here. We do it live. We do it live. We do it live. Yo, let's go. We're doing a little night crawling here tonight, you guys. We got a few real synth-wavy movies coming up. We're going to be talking about The Neon Demon by NWR, Ex Machina, Drive, and I'm also doing Lars and the Real Girl. This is I Is an Other. That sounds like poor grammar, but it's from the French, from Rimbaud. I is an capital O, other. And I'll talk about what that means as we keep going on through this. Yo, special thanks to Rob SF for sponsoring the stream. Rob sponsored a stream on Lars and the Real Girl, and that really inspired me to get into some of these movies that were made between about, 2008 and 2016. There were some really great movies made, not just because of the absolute synthwave aesthetic, which have become completely absorbed into the meme world now. They have been for a long time. But these are really esoteric movies. There's a heavy occult element in especially the Neon Demon. If you haven't seen the Neon Demon, I've watched it so you don't have to. But we're going to be talking about the Danish director, NWR, Nicholas Winding Refn, who did, of course, like we've mentioned, Drive, and Alex Garland. We've covered Alex Garland before because we've talked about Devs and Civil War. I've done The Beach. I've covered The Beach. There's a kind of crossover with these two. Lars and the Real Girl is the real outsider in terms of this, but it'll make sense, especially when we talk about Ex Machina. And I'm going to start with the Neon Demon here because I think this one. I mean, this movie is insane. This movie is wild. It's a really wild movie. And if you've seen what's fun, I guess, about watching this movie with someone who's never seen it before is that you see it once. You really just need to see it once, but you see it once and you can go, oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse all the way up until the last shot. If you think that the movie has too much, if you think there's too much, you just keep going and there's something else. There's some more. Yeah, we need to do Annihilation by Alex Garland. I've been waiting to do that until I can read the book. It's based on a book. And this one, I went back and read the screenplay. I read one of the versions of the script for the Neon Demon, and there's some huge changes in this. But I'm really gonna sort of go into some of the occult elements in the movie because the Neon Demon, I think it's a good film. It is a good film. It's dark. It doesn't have goodness in it, but it is a well done film in terms of its depiction of Los Angeles, the triple postmodern world, fashion, and of course the demonic elements of the other that are involved in terms of a witch's coven in the movie. So when I rewatched the movie, I mean, I saw this in the cinema, as they say. I saw this movie in the cinema, and you get what you get. Any of us watching any of these movies, anybody who's here, anybody in any of our friend streams, I think, everyone's probably pretty equipped by now to watch to watch movies with a keen eye, to watch movies with a deeper eye. You remember the meme? Have you seen the meme of, well, you watch movies, but I watch movies. We're not the same. No, I kid, but we do. We watch movies, and I think to understand that the right off the bat, it's not difficult with movies like this. I mean, you're watching the film or the picture, as Jerry Bruckheimer says, it's a picture. What I like to do is watch pictures. When you're watching the picture, I think that the deeper elements, the esoteric elements in the film really do jump out at you, which is a bit of a paradox because they are so. This is a multi-layered film, and I really do think it's well done. It's the kind of movie that obviously critics will watch the film and say, speaking of Neon Demon here, will watch it and say, "Oh, this is a criticism of the fashion industry, of Hollywood, of the persona, right? The persona, the mask. We all wear kind of figurative masks, as Ezra Pound says, in personae. But what I think you don't get when you watch the film is the outright, I want to say outright the second time around, or outright if you're watching, really thelemic elements of it. I mean, I watched it this time, and it's the kind of movie that I saw, and then I didn't really want to go back to it, and then finally I did go back to it, after all these years, and it's so obvious when you watch it that it's a thelema ritual right on the screen. And there's a part in the film where first of all, I'm going to get into the plot of the movie in a second, but when Elle Fanning is going through her first glimpse into the club life after she meets these three friendly models, one of them is a makeup artist. But when she goes in and she goes into a club, and you see the Jeffrey Dahmer / Ponjodesta initiation ritual taking place in a circle with bondage. I don't know. We don't need to say all that. We'll just say the words. There is a bondage element to this, and there's a person being uplifted in an illuminated light in a circle in this club. And yeah, okay, this is postmodern art. We're watching a kind of multimedia art taking place in a swanky, hip LA club or whatever. But it is also clear that she's being initiated into the coven of the Weird Sisters. the Macbethian Weird Sisters. The it's a coven with three witches, and there's a later scene. There are a couple of other scenes in this. One is involving the wildcat, the cougar that's in the motel room. If you haven't seen the movie, I'll explain this in a minute. And when I watched it this time, I went, "Oh, it's a familiar spirit." There are cannonball themes that are foreshadowed throughout the movie. It's really got everything. It's got everything dark in it. It's got Luminate confirmed big time. It's got the all-seeing eye. It has Thelema, Crowley, fashion, Hollywood, big business. It's got everything you can imagine in an esoteric movie. This film really does have it. The Neon Demon. And when I was watching it this time, I thought to myself, this is just a Crowleyan ritual that they're doing here. So I went back and read the script, and sure enough, the script, one of the original scripts, mentions by name that Ruby, one of the witches, has a copy of, what is it? Not Practical Magic. Hold on. She's got a copy of a Thelema book on her bookshelf, and Jessie, played by Elle Fanning, asks her blatantly, "Are you a witch?" She says, she responds, "Everybody's got to believe in something." Okay. On her wall in her apartment are the words, "Do what thou wilt." She also does the adoration to the moon as part of one of the Thelema rituals in the film, and it's clear when you watch it that that's what it is. Now, probably, I don't know if you guys have seen the interview that NWR did with Kenneth Anger. He's talked about this a number of times. If you've seen any of his earlier work, of course, he did Pusher, then he did Valhalla Rising. Drive was really his breakthrough. I saw Drive in the cinema. Let me turn this light up a little bit. Hold on a second. There we go. I saw Drive in the cinema, in the parlance, in the common parlance. And again, I remember at the time that there was a big deal about, there were people in the movie theater where I was who thought they were going to a Fast and Furious movie, and it was not that. Drive is in the same universe as this, but it's a completely different film. And actually, I would argue that the Ryan Gosling character in Drive has a kind of chivalric element that overrides the rest of the film. It does have the kind of ultra violence that we see, this neon soaked ultra violence. I've seen all of his films in the cinema. I saw Only God Forgives, of course, with Ryan Gosling. And then we kind of go into Ex Machina, which is Alex Garland territory, but that also exists in the same kind of universe. And that world is now, which is has come to pass, I think, probably since then. We knew we were going into that at the time, but now we are fully immersed in this world. This world, which is a clear dichotomy between two separate elements, and really Hollywood is an other. It's another place that is completely different from the world in which we live, but has soaked into our contemporary world, our society, the way that we think. And it's funny going back and watching some of these movies and just how future now they are, how futuristic, and yet the cell phone usage. I mean, as far as technology goes, and I'm going to get into this with Ex Machina, it's amazing how prescient the film was, but also how of its time. I don't know if it can be both of those things, but somehow it manages to be completely contemporary, but also prescient for now. It's like in Spaceballs. We're in the now. We're in the now. We're in the now. President Scroob. So I'm going to begin with the Neon Demon and kind of make my way into the other films. So if you like the stream, by the way, please make sure that you like and share. Give me a like, hit that like button for me, and also you can super chat. You can ask me questions. I'll try to get to those as they come, but if not, I'll get to them at the end of the stream. And also you can hit the links to support me there. Now, all these films have been covered. I mean, they've all been covered, and I think that a lot of that coverage really does help us in terms of our film vocabulary. because one of the great things I think about this sort of new wave of filmmakers, especially European filmmakers that came around in the 2010s, that they take a lot from movies like Metropolis, movies, from The Past is Prologue. And yet again, dystopia is now, and yet we recognize all the elements on the screen. It's not like we're watching something completely foreign to us. Ex Machina is really an insane movie because it doesn't, just when you think that it will be impossible to top a movie and to make something even more Luminate confirmed, we get something else. And all of the films that we watch tend to, we've talked about how films really fall into like two categories. The Gnosticism, of course, overrides that. I mean, Harold Bloom, right, with Gnosticism and Pentecostalism is a kind of the language of the American religion, as he calls it. And then we also get The Most Dangerous Game. And we've covered so many of those. Everyone has. But I think it's important to go back and watch these movies now because the Overton window changes and time sort of speeds up as it slows down in some sort of, again, weird paradox. And here we are. We find ourselves in a world where, things like the Met Ball, the Met Gala, I think that normal people, and I don't mean normie people, I mean normal people, watch normal people as in what Norm Macdonald described as the normal person. Normal people sort of watch these films and watch things like the Met Gala, and we kind of go, I mean, we find it absolute repugnance to just the idea of most of the thing. It's just a Hunger Games pageant that we see live on. And Hollywood's going to Hollywood. They're going to keep doing their thing. But I think it's really amazing to go back and just watch how much is packed into these. They really are multi-layered, and that's a good sign for film. Of course, the question is whether some of the movies we watch, especially we've talked about this with Kubrick, whether some of the films that we watch are a commentary on things that have soaked into societal elements, or whether they are just revelatory and relevant. So let's talk about the Neon Demon. Neon Demon, again, of course, is NWR, Nicholas Winding Refn, Danish filmmaker, and he co-wrote this script, at least this version of this script with a woman named Mary Laws, and he directed the film. And the film basically, in a nutshell, the movie in a nutshell is the story of the kind of weird rite of passage of a young model named Jessie, played by Elle Fanning, who materializes in Hollywood and rises up the ranks of the innocent, wide-eyed, doe-eyed, as they call her, doe-eyed girl in Tinseltown, straight up to the top to being a runway supermodel until finally she meets her fate, walking into it willingly, really, at the hands of these three witches, one of whom is played by, is her name Abby Lee? Her name's Abby something. Is it Abby Lee? Who I gotta say, and I'm going to talk about the acting, of course, because that's part of what I do here. Abby Lee, is that her name? Somebody in chat tell me if that's her name. Somebody can IMDb that real quick. I can't remember the actress's name. She's Australian. She's in Mad Max Fury Road. She's really good. She is fantastic. We get what's her name? The girl who plays Ruby, who is in a lot of esoteric movies. Of course, she's in Donnie Darko, and she's in what else? What else did we watch recently? She's in Hunger Games. Hey, there's Jamie. Drops $4.99 super chat. She says you deserve a tip for watching the eyeball squish. Yeah. So Jamie's well aware of this movie. And this is it's crazy because, I think our friends who are certainly expert at this have really broken down these films, and it's amazing actually how I think we tend to forget that there's so much content in terms of movie making, literature, that we see these things and then we sort of forget that, oh, that occurred in a movie and it's worth going back to them. But yeah, this Abby woman, Jenna Malone. Thank you, Melly. Appreciate that. Jenna Malone is the other actress who's in Donnie Darko, and in this film, she plays the the Hecate character in this. And we forget that not only does the all-seeing eye occur within the power pyramid in the film, but one of the characters literally consumes it. And you know that when you watch the movie, I think that I think that people ought to be able to see. It's kind of like with argumentation, right? It's like with debate. Our friends who are great at debating. I think that any great debater, you watch a debate, and of course, one side of the debate should be able to make the argument better that the other side is making better than they can in terms of preparing for argumentation, in terms of preparing for an argument and a counter argument and anticipating what the next person is going to say. And I think that watching a movie like this, any of the films that I've listed tonight, you can see that the critics will say that the consumption of the other character's body parts and their eyeball represents, of course, the obvious elements of living forever, this kind of fairy tale story, but also with the eye pointed at the audience, we see from our perspective, we watch this eyeball drop out onto a carpet, and we see another character pick it up and consume it, and literally skavooshing, stomping and skavooshing the eyeball, which means the consumption, capitalist consumption. But it's also more than that. And the more than that is obviously and maybe it's not so obvious, would be the straight up Macbethian occult elements of the film. Remember, of course, I got to reference Macbeth. That Macbeth involves three witches, weird sisters, in a kind of Sophoclean ages of man, right? Where we have the old one, the middle-aged one, the younger one, and then we see later the covens, the huge coven scene, right? I conjure you, profess by that which you do know. But we also have an outsider witch, and that we get that a lot in Shakespeare. We get, of course, the play within the play and the mousetrap in Hamlet, but we also get Hecate appearing, and Hecate appears, of course, in Macbeth. That scene is usually cut, but we get Hecate coming, and then we also have Lady Macbeth. And my thesis for Lady Macbeth was that Lady Macbeth is, if not the head of the coven, she's a member of the coven, or at least being initiated into it as such. And that, of course, is why her actions, Macbeth's actions, revolve around it. The drugging, the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. The raven himself is horse, right? She says, "Unsex me here." Well, that's the sort of role that Jesse plays in this film, but Jesse is also a kind of anachronistic crossover with Ophelia. There are clear elements of Ophelia. Remember the Jim Morrison poem, Ode to Brian Jones, right? Dead at a swimming pool, age 27. Ophelia leaves sodden in silk, chlorine dream, mad stifled witness. The angel man finally claimed this benevolent soul. Well, that's what she is in this movie. Elle Fanning begins as a kind of wispy character who sort of materializes in L.A. and is presented with a series of dangerous circumstances. Think of the initiation ritual here. She has to be helped along by somebody from the old world, right? We get Dean, who is her initial photographer that takes these pictures of her, which appear as if she's the victim of a crime. That's the opening shot, really, right there, with Elle Fanning on a sofa here. Almost the anachronism is crazy because we get a kind of Rapunzel here with her hair tied up. We get Ophelia later on, and on the sofa here, we kind of get a Desdemona-looking character. But, of course, inside the synthwave pyramid with the skyscape behind us, Midnight City, we get the L.A. skyscape with the blood red dripping from her neck, and then, of course, blue and red on the ground in waves, which is to signify that we have a character always looking in mirrors. And one of the interesting things about the movie is sort of how it's not tied up into one central. There's no lesson to be learned from the movie. I think it's always a mistake for us to try to think of art as teaching as didactic and to teach us lessons. We don't receive our morals from watching movies, but we do have a moral stance and when watching the film. And of course, we get a system of whatever the morals of the filmmaker or whatever the power elite or whoever whoever the filmmaker is, whatever the movie they're trying to portray. Yeah, of course, Melly. Yeah, we get a kind of Narcissus and an Echo within this. We also get that in Ex Machina, and I'm going to kind of try to differentiate the three movies here, even though they do have significant crossover, because both the Neon Demon and Ex Machina, again, two different filmmakers, really have taken through a kind of labyrinth. So again, we have Greek mythological elements escaping, our psyche, the psyche myth, the escape from the labyrinth with the kind of Daedalus and the Minotaur. The question is who is the Minotaur? The Minotaur in this, is the Minotaur supposed to be society or something lame like that, or is it supposed to be representative of, well, with the pyramid, it would be Satan, literally. This in fact, the first movie is called The Neon Demon, so I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think I don't think I'm violating the paradigm here to discuss the movie in terms of its demonic elements. It's called The Neon Demon. So the question is, how are we supposed to take this? Is it literal or figurative? Well, of course, it's both in art that works, and I think it's both in these. Also, one more sort of disclaimer. I think that it's a mistake to look at what the filmmakers say about their work. It's the exact same as as when we talk about T.S. Eliot or Robert Frost, the psychotic poet. Remember that stream, as we've done with a number of writers that served again as good prerequisites for understanding film. It's a mistake to ask the writer or to ask the artist what their vision is of the film, because we don't need them to answer questions verbally. We get their answers, if there are answers, in the film medium or on the page. In other words, what they wrote is exactly what we should take. It's not what their commentary is afterwards. And it's amazing how many people want to, and it's fine if we look into what they say with a discerning eye and we understand that, but really what matters in the end is what they have in the film and what they presented to us if we're analyzing movies. And it is really amazing how many people, I think, take the word of an artist for what they intended, rather, because oftentimes it is completely divergent from what they have presented. I mean, it's not a stretch to say that great artists often misunderstand the work that they present. It's not even up to the artist to present an understanding. We don't get, the exception, I guess, would be to what I'm about to say, would be something like with T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. We get this brief sort of essay talking about Jesse Weston's From Ritual to Romance beforehand, but even that is unnecessary. We don't need the commentary or the explanation. We have the explanation within the artwork itself. So Elle Fanning, Jesse, really just materializes right here on the screen, and it looks like she is the victim of a horrible crime laid out on this, sort of love seat. And as the camera pulls back, we understand that it's a film shoot. Now, we know going into it that it's probably a film shoot, but the point is that we have a kind of eternal return here. The beginning is the end is the beginning. And if it's not with her, then it is certainly with the fashion world altogether. And there are some great lines in this where one of the characters, the Alessandro Nivola character, he really is a fine actor. He was in Face Off, you remember? He playing Nick Cage's Other in that film. But he's also in that great movie, not many people have seen it. What's the movie with Jesse Eisenberg where Jesse Eisenberg joins a karate dojo and they end up being a kind of night-crawling vigilante crew with this cult leader at the head of it, which is, again, extremely prescient for the times that we live in, but that's Alessandro Nivola. And I think that just to speak on acting before I get more into the analysis of the breakdown of this film, I think that I'm continuously noticing some of these character actors and some who are not even character actors, they just seem to play bit parts, or they, like for instance with Dirty Harry that we just covered, the guy who plays Scorpio. I mean, you have to have movies. You know, people love movies that are completely star-studded. That's what draws an audience. Look at the Oppenheimer movie. It's just full of famous people and all this stuff. But I think anybody who, a film appreciator or just people who like to go see good movies, what you understand in a subtle way is that those do not a good movie make. It doesn't matter how many A-list actors you have in a movie. That doesn't make the movie. What actually makes the movie is the ensemble. You need solid character actors that you believe exist in this world. And the Neon Demon is really full of those characters. And there have been a bunch of other ones. I mean, even Lars and the Real Girl has a few of these characters. Ex Machina has very few characters, but Oscar Isaac really rules the movie. And I'll get to why I think that's the case in a little bit when I discuss that. But you know, this what's her name, you guys? Abby. She's really fantastic. She really does steal the movie. She plays one of the witches in the Neon Demon. I know somebody probably put it in the chat there, but I'm a slow boy, so I missed it. So Abby Lee, that's her name. She plays Sarah. She's a model. She's a real model. She's obviously a model when you watch the movie. She's physically a model, and yet she somehow manages to portray more depth in a shallow character than anyone else in the film. And it's really through her eyes and the way that she sort of reacts in the movie. Not to get too James Lipton about it, but Abby Lee was a wonderful conglomeration of the postmodern aesthetic through the critique of high fashion with a Karl Lagerfeld, Yves Saint Laurent, quasi-Tom Fordian, Chanel Renaissance. A tour de force performance is what James Lipton would say. So we see this character. She's going through the initial materialization on screen of the model at the beginning of her career being photographed by this Dean character, who again, this guy is great. He's really good. And then we see her take a step back. The two of them are talking. She gets in to see a modeling agent, a kind of what's the name of that agency? Wilhelmina, kind of Wilhelmina agency, but way less, I guess, legit. If that's even I don't know. Played by Christina Hendricks, of course, because she's part of the stable of Nicholas Winding Refn actresses. So she goes in and talks to her. She sort of is seen in this interview. The other models are kind of pushed aside, and Christina Hendricks looks at her photographs and says, a lot of people here want to make it. A lot of people are going to be big. You are going to be a star. Because, of course, what is it that does that? Well, she has this innocent, doe-eyed innocence to her. And we know that is because she is a VIR character in the film. She has been untainted by the demonic creeperdom of Hollywood as she goes in. Yes, Melly says she is the kind of Giesel and Maxwell. She certainly is that. She's a little less active. I mean, she's only running the agency, Giesel, but yes, that's certainly a sort of an apt comparison. And she also, at this point, something that is very G-Max is that she is told to lie about her age. And so we know, and One thing that I, just as a side note here, one thing that I find really interesting when I watch some of these filmmakers, especially some of Garland's movies, not all of them, but especially these NWR movies, is that there is a clear homage to Stanley Kubrick's thematic approach to making movies. It's maybe his tone. It's the tone that he sets in his films. We talked about this with Eyes Wide Shut. Eyes Wide Shut is certainly the same kind of universe overall, but it's a different aesthetic universe when we look at this. This one is completely neon soaked and just bright and vivid because it's the makeup world and it's fashion. I forgot to mention that before we even see the opening shot of Elle Fanning, we're met with the title cards, and that alone is pretty cool. I mean, it's like going into a West Gallery opening or something in New York, a West Village Gallery opening, at the Chelsea Death March. And what that's supposed to signify, I understood this time, is obviously with the colors is the mica and talc in the most vivid sense, a kind of crystalline makeup that is thrown at the camera. So the letters of the title cards materialize out of the makeup. So what that means to me is that, number one, obviously the movie is going to be about makeup and fashion, but it's also going to be about the personae and the masks within masks that these characters wear, and that the audience is supposed to represent, that they somehow are wearing, even participating in the watching of the film. So everything is bright and shimmering and soaked in the most extreme Pantone colors, and yet this is all surface. It's completely all surface material. So after she gets the job, she essentially, Dean, her friend, asks her, well, what about the, did you mention my photos? And she says, yeah, there might be a point. So then she's given she gets a gig, and she goes in to see this other photographer. I think his name's Jack. His name's Jack in the script. And Jack is, again, one of these characters on film where you look at this guy and you go, first of all, you get it's a kind of conflicted, disturbing feeling watching the guy. He looks like he's dressed in all sort of Rick Owens, all black. He's bald, skeletal face. This guy is the photographer, and he's all serious and all art. And I think people probably want to look at this and say, this is the Terry Richardson character, but he's not that. Terry Richardson is much more, has a much more grotesque thing going on. This guy seems to be like, this is the guy who, like, would photograph the cover art for Yeezus or something. Ironic, because there is no cover art for Yeezus, right? It's a clear jewel case for the CD version with a piece of orange duct tape over it in a minimalist Kanye style that he sort of understood the stripping back of the music industry. But this guy's looking at her. He hardly says any words, and then he says, this is going to be a closed set. Bump on, you know what that means. It's going to be something creepy. Another movie that plays a kind of prerequisite for this would be the movie Gia. Have you guys seen that? Gia was one of the movies that Angelina Jolie broke through with in the late 90s because she's playing what's her name? Gina Karanji, is that her name? She was the supermodel who in the 80s modeled for YSL, Yves Saint Laurent, and a bunch of these people. She got into speedballs and going to Hollywood parties and all this stuff. I think she unfortunately passed away pretty early, but it's a sad look at the awful life of a supermodel. But the movie is pretty interesting. There's a great scene where she comes out of the meatpacking district in a photo shoot, gets on the back of this guy's motorcycle and rides around in a geisha outfit, which is pretty cool filmmaking. But we get that as that's the sort of provenance for this type of movie. So we have this character Jack. He says it's a closed set, and of course, what does he do? She has to remove thy shift, right? She's about to live fergaliciously, I suppose. But when I mentioned Kubrick earlier, I don't know why I'm doing De Niro eyes. When I mentioned, I don't know why I'm doing that. It's either De Niro. It's like goes into De Niro or Trump, with the hands. It's just because of the times, I guess. When I mentioned this guy Robert De Niro, he's on the stage. Shouts out to Nick Mullen. If you are watching this and you see a kind of Kubrickian thing going on here with the film, one of the reasons I say it's Kubrickian in the common parlance is that the distance and space in terms of the dialogue, the space between words, between spoken words on the screen, and the amount of breathing room that they get on film. I mean, you could tell with this script that whole swaths of the script were slashed because it originally was doing too much telling and not enough showing. And the movie audience doesn't need that, especially when we're being shown a movie about models. It's supposed to be a kind of all visual. And that is certainly taken from Kubrick. I mean, Kubrick is the one who really does that, especially, I mean, just take Eyes Wide Shut as your example, where Nicole Kidman does the Venus de Milo between Yakin and Boaz talking to Tom Cruise, and then you understand, watching the film, that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are obviously symbol and simulacra. They're supposed to be the movie version of the characters that they are in real life, right? Anthony Kidman, all that stuff. And that they are kind of pawns for Kubrick's set piece showing pawns in terms of the Eyes Wide Shut, Illuminate, Confirm Society, and using Bill Hartford, just like Kubrick, in a way, is using him to portray this in the film. And I'm sure Tom Cruise was aware of that doing this. Tom Cruise is the one, after all, watching films. I think probably Nicole Kidman probably watched the film and thought, who cares? But I think that, the Venus de Milo, Yiannopoulos, Jethro. I think that when you watch this film, the way that the characters have this eerie, weird space between lines, between words and their dialogue, and the amount of breathing room. It's the same in this show, Too Old to Die Young, which is a really, Too Old to Die Young, which I need to cover in the future. Just a little tangent here. That's what we do. We do it live, so we're doing tangents. Too Old to Die Young is really the supreme Nicholas Winding Refn because, with episodic, non-linear narrative named for tarot card, major arcana, and the combination of all of the various elements of organized crime, assassination, L.A., David Lynchian kind of weird meta humor, and absolute ultra violence on screen. That really is, I think, the culmination. It's sort of apex of his filmmaking. He obviously did that show. It's an Amazon show. He did that show because of the amount of space that he could use with the TV format, with the streaming format. So I think that is a kind of furthering of the Neon Demon sort of world, or Drive, with Miles Teller playing the main character there. But so let me get back to this guy. What's his name? Jack or whatever, the photographer. Jack, we see that he leads Elle Fanning onto this sort of glowing white soundstage, which is another step into Illuminate, Confirm, Initiation here, where she's walking into the light, but this is a Gnostic false light. This is all surface. This is a literal film stage, and it is completely white with her, again, like floating, almost Truman Show style at the end of the film, breaking out of breaking out of the maze of the labyrinth, the Gnostic labyrinth, walking into clouds, taking the stairway to heaven. And this one, she is just kind of floating there, and she has removed her Ophelia-like flowery dress, and we see the camera focus in on her because, again, Elle Fanning, this is what's creepy about the movie. Elle Fanning is playing the film model Ophelia, Rapunzel, Hansel and Gretel, dark folklore version of herself here, and you're aware of that. So at least, thankfully, they focus in on just her face, and we see this Jack character. It's real. This movie, as it gets worse. At every stage, there's something worse that happens, and that's obviously part of the initiation. But Jack, we go from colorized to total darkness to white light, and then he appears with this suitcase, pulls it out, and he's got his camera, and he comes up and he approaches her from behind, and he's got gold paint. He smatters this body paint on her collarbones, and this is supposed to evoke the sense that she has become a kind of living statue here. She's becoming a what's-her-face in Goldfinger. She is completely covered in gold. It reminds me of Goldfinger. It reminds me of the scene in JFK. It's just like the scene in JFK. Remember with Kevin Bacon and Tommy Lee Jones, and playing David. We got David Ferry and Clay Bertrand, Clay Shaw, right, and Kevin Bacon, and they're having their weird amyl nitrate, ORGY at the CIA palace in New Orleans or whatever, and all that stuff. But he's painted in gold because he's supposed to be a kind of hermetic Cupid. Well, here we get the Oscar. We get the golden statue. She's become the golden statue. She's the golden, walking into the golden light, and this is part of her initiation. She's taking on a new skin, right? Yeah, Christopher mentions the bondage. Well, was that right before that in the film? It doesn't really matter in terms of what's linear in this film up to this point. So she also, I guess right before this is where he saw her. So she was it's right after this. It's right after this. Okay, I got it. I'm not totally scatterbrained here. After the film, after the photo shoot, she is wiping off the gold. Is it the gold paint or the red paint? I don't know, man. She's draped in dripping blood, and then she's draped in gold, and she meets Jenna Malone. Jenna Malone is looking at her backwards, like looking at her through the mirrors, and she says, you're very beautiful. She introduces this innocent character walking into the fairy tale here. This. I'll get to the soundscape in a minute. But she goes to the party and introduces her to her two friends who are this is clearly a coven. And I find it hilarious that anybody could watch this movie and not right away say, this is a coven. There are three girls in a pyramid facing the initiate, and each one is playing a role. We have Abby Lee playing the bad cop witch, and then the other girl playing the good cop witch, and then we've got Jenna Malone playing the top of the pyramid here, playing the Hecate character, kind of a mid character, midway between the two. So she is battered verbally with a combination of compliments and insults, and this is to throw her off guard and say, hey, you're new here. Hey, you're very beautiful. You might fit in with us. This is more than just Mean Girls or, girls getting to know each other at the party. This is the beginning stages of initiation. And so then they take her to the party, they take her to the club. They even ask her about her deepest secrets or non-secrets, as she has it. And of course, the poor innocent girl wants to fit in, but she, tries to lie about her personal activity, and she can't really. They see right through her. Of course, then they take her to this club, and we hear the dude. The soundtrack. I will say this: the soundtrack to the yes, Maddie says Covens are so fetch nowadays. She the soundtrack to this movie is incredible. It really does have a totally phosphorescent score. And what's his name? Martinez, who did this, and he did the score for Drive, right, with the ticking of the clock. Did you know that he was one of the original drummers for Red Hot Chili Peppers? He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with them. This was in the 80s. I remember reading about him in the Anthony Kiedis book, Scar Tissue. And he, of course, went off to do movie scores, and he really is fantastic. I mean, I think people like Mike Dean, now, of course, take a lot from this guy and his movie scores. This is what, what's his name? Anthony, what's the name of the guy who does M83? This is what M83 tried to do with Oblivion, and I think that was a step into trying to make synth scores for Hollywood, but there was either too much oversight or there's too much cinematic detail with M83 making movie scores, because they don't really translate like they do in just his regular his music. I saw M83 September 19th, 2012, and that was the Midnight City tour with Morgan Kibbe, of course, from White Sea, who my friend Paul knows in L.A., and she plays the synth, and that was one of the best concerts I've ever seen. I went alone. I actually went to the concert alone, and it was mind blowing. I love that. I love M83, especially Saturdays Equals Youth. Anyway, I won't get into the deep esoteric weeds of music and music soundtracks too much here, but suffice it to say that his soundtrack is really most of the movie. This movie would not be what it is without that score, because the two really work symbiotically to produce this otherworldly vision of dystopia now, esoterica now, and it's totally different from Hans Zimmer and his Batman scores, where we're told how to feel. I love the Hans Zimmer score for Dune, by the way, for Dune 2 and Dune. I think they're awesome. But yeah, if you like Midnight City, you should listen to Saturdays Equals Youth. It was Pitchfork Album of the Year 2000. It came out 2008, I think. Pitchfork Album. I saw Phanogram as well. Yeah. Saturdays Equals Youth, Graveyard Girl, amazing. We Own the Sky, awesome album. Just totally killer. Kim and Jesse. So anyway, when they go into the club, you notice that there are people standing around talking in a typical model party fashion. Okay, here's a question. Have you guys ever been to a model party? I wonder how many of you guys have ever been to a model party. I've been to a model party. Weird, I wasn't the model. I was some dude with a mystery skateboards hat on. No, I was living in New York in 2004, and I was living with my best friends, and my best friend went to a model photo shoot and came back with headshots. And she shouts out to T. Came back, and they were offering him work right away. And I said, "What, dude?" No, but they offered him work right away, and that was also because his first cousin, I'm not using names, but his first cousin was a model on Project Runway. You remember that TV show, Project Runway? Project Runway, the people like make fashion, and they're going to be the next designer or whatever, and they have to have models, runway models, to model the clothes. Anyway, she was a Ford model or whatever, and she was beautiful, and she was one of the models on the television, and not just once. I mean, she was the model on the television show. So anyway, when we were living in New York, she was there, and she invited us to a model party. So we went to, so me and my two homeboys went to this modeling agency in the West Village. We went up onto the rooftop and we had a couple of drinks or whatever, and then we got in some limo, and we went to, I think it was we went to Soho. We went to Soho. It was the middle of the night, and it was just, it's just facades of buildings. There was, normal traffic on the street, and then there were a few people lined up outside, and then we, jumped in the queue, and the door opened to what looked like just a regular apartment building, and it was a dude in black tie, looking like a John Wick movie, and he checked the list. We were on the list. We went in, went straight into the lift, went into the elevator, went up to the penthouse there, and when the doors opened at this apartment, dude, when the doors opened at this apartment, we were met with, we were met with like, Miss Kitten French techno and visuals of like a beach party, and they had sand and swimming pools and beach chairs, and all of the models were like in not something like Baywatch, that would be dated. It was they were wearing, it was like model bathing suits. They were all the barmaids and the whatever, and it was just people standing around statuesque, and people dancing or whatever, and then I remember at one point somebody walked by saying something like, "Where is Maximo? Have you seen Maximo?" And they were like, "Maximo's in the back." And I remember going to one side of the bar, and these doors opened, and there was a dude, like an Italian count or something, on this like dais inside this room, like this golden room, like just sitting there talking, like in the middle. He's talking to some dude, and there were models like everywhere in the back, and then the doors closed again. That was the party within the party or whatever, man. It was surreal, and I was like, it was like in the doors, these people are vampires, man. Come on, where's your will to be weird? And then after that, we left and went to Crowbar till 6 a.m, or Marquee or something like that. Anyway, that was pretty wild. But this one is much more. This party, that was New York. This party is much more L.A. because the people are standing around. Yeah, I mean, I had like a Lacoste shirt on or something at this party. I was like, somebody was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "I'm a writer for the Atlantic. I'm here to cover the show later, or whatever, just some kind of bullshit." But in L.A., the people are all standing around statuesque. They look statuesque. That's their whole function. And they are being, Fidelio was the password. And they are appearing to not move. In other words, they look like non-breathing statues. They look like non-people in this thing. And they are animated by what's on the surface, like as if they're breathing some sort of fake oxygen from the exterior. They don't look like people in this scene. But one of the characters sees Jessie, and eventually she makes her way into getting involved with this other guy. She gets an audition with this other guy who's played by Alessandro Nivola, and Abby Lee is one of the people, and it's crazy because this is one scene where Abby Lee's great. She's sitting in this chair, and she looks and I'm not just meaning the word skeletal, like she, which would be an easy word to grasp for describing this group of models, but she looks unalive. She looks like the life force is draining out of her, and it's clear that she's not going to get the role or the part or the gig or whatever. And of course, Jessie walks in and gets the gig. So he sees her and he says, "Where have you been?" or whatever. Now, meantime, there's a juxtaposition between the neon-soaked high fashion model world and where she's living. She's staying in this cockroach motel on Sunset Boulevard or whatever. I don't know, LA. And this is where we get Keanu Reeves come in. And Keanu Reeves, it's interesting in this role. You know, he's played a few different roles like this where he plays smaller roles in movies that are pretty potent. This one you can tell is Keanu Reeves in very good shape, about to play John Wick, but he's playing a real creep who owns this motel. And what I think is going on here is that is part of the satellite of the GMAX sort of coven fashion world that's going on. This is also part of the initiation, because we learn that this is a kind of staging ground for, let's say, the human beings that are moved through Atlanta every year, that we've discussed in terms of Manhunter and Wayne Williams and these kinds of people. So we did Stranger Things, Stargate Monarch. They are ending up at this motel room, at this motel. I guess, yeah, somebody said Skid Row. It seems like it's on Skid Row, I guess. And you see the inside of her motel room, and of course it's funny because I look at the motel room and I'm like, fuck it, I can stay here. Whatever. You know, I can eat airplane food. I can stay in a cockroach motel wherever. It doesn't matter to me, so long as I'm hanging out with my homeboys and, or whatever I'm doing. That sort of stuff doesn't matter to me. But it's obviously supposed to be a juxtaposition between this. Of course, I don't want to stay in this motel. This motel sucks, dude. For the reasons that it is when you watch the film. Also, man, who is staying in motel and hotel rooms where things like D. Pitty is going out on the top floor with Cassie and doing those awful things? Dude, you're staying in a hotel room on that floor and you come out and you see that, and defenestration becomes a thing. I'll just say that. Not something that you have heard a vocab word for. I mean, I'm serious. That shit, well, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Hey there, how do you think NWR could do with directing a Glamorama, right, Brad Easton Ellis adaptation? Hey, good point there, Maddie, with $4.99 for that super chat. Thank you so much for that $5 super chat, Maddie. Really appreciate that. Yo, that's a good point. That's a pretty insightful point. I think that he probably would be the director to do that. Maybe not now, but certainly in the 2010s, he would have been great for that. Of course, we did a Glamorama analysis here with the Monarch Assassins, right? We did that in Zoolander, and I think that might be redundant for him at this point to do that. But that's a really great point, because there is a similar aesthetic here, I think. And so anyway, thank you for that, Maddie. I think that what happens here at some point when Jessie goes back to her motel room is she walks in with Dean. This is a great scene. She walks in with Dean, and you see what I don't want to rewind it, and I don't want to freeze frame on this, but this is a horrifying scene. This is a kind of Charlie Manson creepy crawly scene. She opens the door to her motel room, and you see what looks like a human figure in shadow crouching beside her motel room. And the shock of opening the door and seeing this shadow, it reminds me of Under the Skin with the black goo, or a shadow person. It looks like there's a literal shade in her motel room. She closes the door, goes back downstairs. She asks Keanu Reeves to come up and take care of it. He gets this other Skid Row junkie on dog food or whatever to come up there and take care of it. He's got his Warriors bat, and he grabs her and says, "You did this." So now we know he goes from being what he could have been a hero in this situation. No, this is just another functionary, another soldier for them. And when they get in the door, when they open the door, he says, "I think I found your culprit who destroyed the hotel room." Because she says, "No, I didn't do it. Well, we see this is really great filmmaking. This is really good. You see a cougar turn and look at the camera and jump from a wall onto the bed. And it's in a kind of neon slow motion, but in the dark, and it looks like a dream. And so when I rewatched the movie this time, I thought this is a familiar spirit. This is it says in the script what does it say? A wildcat. 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 What movie's that from? Yo, quiz time, trivia. What's this? BLA trivia? Name the movie where a character says, Wildcat. What movie is that? First to get it gets a. You're the Chad. You're the Chad of the group. That's what you get. You get you're the Chad. Somebody tell me what movie that is. So, the cougar, though, is obviously not obviously. The cougar, to me, represents, first of all, the fact that the characters, the part of the movie is about characters fighting their age. It's part of it is a transhumanist movie. And it's vampirical, it's transhumanist. Nobody knows yet. Wildcat. And so the character, the wildcat here, the cougar, is the predatory older woman, and that is, to me, is obviously the Ruby character, right? The Jenna Malone character. That's her familiar spirit, or that is her in some sort of. She's an animal. She's an anima. She's animated. Her soul is astral projected into this creature. She's a witch, and that's her. And she's there to be a predator in this. Yeah, as Jacob says right there, a strange wilderness. Right. She took a face from the ancient gallery and she walked on down the hall. So. What happens after this becomes a surreal moment? You know, remember we did a stream on surrealism, talking about the Surrealist Manifesto and Andre Breton. That was in the Picture of Dorian Gray stream, which actually is a great, again. If this were a film class, then Picture of Dorian Gray would be the prerequisite for watching this film, for understanding this film, because we get occultic dissociation, soul selling, and the mask of the persona. Well, anyway, what happens is that the characters are obviously, they are being predators on this model who's climbing up this kind of Gnostic ladder. Yo, Toledo gets it. Toledo, you are the Chadette. You are the queen. You are the queen. Toledo gets it. Everybody give Toledo a big round of applause there. Give her a clap, because Toledo is the brilliant mind here who got my bad impression, my line from the movie. It is the Royal Tenenbaums, and that is Eli Cash. Remember, Wildcat. That's his book. Right? Great job, Toledo. Toledo for the dub. Toledo, you are the alpha trivia master for tonight, for sure. That's really fantastic. I'm glad you got that reference. I'm glad that one is still floating around in the psychosphere. That's awesome. Nice one. What happens? Another important scene is where Jessie is. How does she end up? She goes to the runway, and this is where I think Alessandro Nivola has his great monologue. They walk into this, again, surrealist, otherworldly scene of like, it's an after party from the high fashion runway event where, by the way, Jessie walks in between, she walks through the pyramid into Luminate Confirm. She is now she has her kind of apotheosis into being a supermodel, and she turns and she kisses herself in the diamond mirror and is a kind of Echo and Narcissus mixed into one here. And she goes up and she is talking to Alessandra Nivola. This is a great scene because her friend Dean is with her, and Dean walks up and he says, "Hey, I'm Dean," and Nivola says, "Bean? Your name is Bean? What kind of a name is Bean?" Totally jazz him out in the scene. Then he said, he actually, this is funny because the way he talks in this scene is the kind of way that I talk IRL when I'm doing a kind of irony character. He says, he says, "Well, as an artistic creator, I like to notice the aesthetic disturbance of the," and it's very it's vacuous, but it's actually a really funny scene. And he then goes on to quote Henry V, which we've covered, of course. And he's got this great scene where he talks about how he compares one of the Coven girls to Jessie, and he says, "You, on the one hand, are beautiful, but something's missing. It's too synthetic, too contrived. You've had work done, and I can tell. Look at your jawline. Whereas Jessie over here is the complete jouissance." And he makes her stand up in a humiliation ritual and turn around before he denigrates her and says, "Jessie is the new girl," right? Well, after so what happens is Dean, he goes on to say, this Nivola character says, "Beauty isn't everything, it's the only thing." And then Dean scoffs at this and he says, "Don't tell me that you think beauty comes from the inside." And he says, "Yeah, that's exactly what I think," which is great because the Dean character, although he ends up, unfortunately, and especially in the script, he's made into a simp. He's made into a guy he's always helping. She says to him in the script, "Stop playing the nice guy." But he does in this scene stand up for himself. And even though I think that he's the outsider here, he took the pictures with good intentions. Although the first time we see Dean, it's crazy because when we're looking, somebody explain Dean to me. Because when we're looking at Dean, when we first see him in the photo shoot at the very beginning, he does have a kind of Kubrick stare looking at this character like he's also a predator. He's just not on the same level of predator as as these other characters that we meet along the way, the Jack character, the Nivola character. And of course, look, hey, you know what would be a good comeback? If you were in a roundtable Atlantic Monthly New Yorker pseudo intellectual argument with someone who was quoting Henry V, then you would say something like that. And I actually, this is true, that beauty is, in the poetic sense, the force that through the green fuse drives the flower. It's a Dylan Thomasian form of beauty that is both from the outside and from the inside. And beauty is truth, beauty, and goodness in a Keatsian sense are obviously not just what a person looks like on the outside, but that does matter. We see beauty and we recognize it. We recognize symmetry and good-looking people. We all recognize that because we're human beings, but obviously we're trying to recognize the goodness of a person's soul, and he wants that from her here, and sometimes the two are completely at odds, right? But we see that he wants to believe that about her, but he can't, because in the next scene, I'm kind of going in a nonlinear way here, but when Abby doesn't get the role that Jessie got, this is before the high fashion scene, we see her go into the bathroom. This is a great scene. This is one of the scenes in the movie where you go, oh, if you thought it was bad before, it gets worse. So she walks into the typical concrete cinder block bathroom of wherever this industrial park is, walks in, and she smashes the mirror. Now, we talked about how the house, the apartment, any kind of physical structure in a movie, and especially in literature, always represents the human being, the character, and how
smashing of mirrors obviously represents a smashing of the psyche. She is destroying herself. But it's interesting how it works here, because she is breaking through what she wants to see on the inside, looking into herself in the mirror, but she's trying to break the absolute shallow, superficial version of which is the mirror showing her back to herself. Not to mention that we continuously go through the looking glass in this, and that's going to occur in the next scene. But when we see her and Jesse walks in and tries to placate her and tell her that she did a good job and she's beautiful also, she ends up putting her hand down and she gets a mirror shard. Hey, my book is Monarch with Mirror Man, right? The man who wears a mask of his own face and wears mirror shards for eyes. And she gets the mirror shard in the book that I need to get published. When she gets the mirror shard in her hand, she removes this deep cut out of her palm. The palm here, by the way, I think of the Marika Abramovich ritual and I'll get back to Marika Abramovich with the gold. The Marika Abramovich eat the pain ritual with Pan Jodesta and the hand and the cut hand. She's got the cut hand here, facing the mirror, facing this full witch. And Abby Lee looks at the blood on her hand, grabs her hand, and starts sucking the blood out of her hand. She's gone full vampire. She's gone full Teeter Peel, trying to steal the life essence from this young person who's now being, at this point, still unwittingly initiated into the coven of high fashion. Marika Abramovich, don't forget the gold, the painting of the gold is also obviously again, I keep saying obvious, I guess it's not obvious, seems to be a kind of reference to OTO or Thelema ritual with Marika Abramovich. Remember, with Go Out into the Wilderness. She paints Lady Gaga in gold. She takes her 3 days into the wilderness to come back before she's remade as a golden goddess or whatever, the Golden Dawn. But at this point, Abby Lee has gone full vampire. Fast forward to the next scene where she's at the motel and she hears the Pan Jodesta Washington, D.C. restaurant, basement audio, dark, creeper, illuminate, confirmed, horrible, demonic noises taking place. I'm not going to say the word. Don't write the word. Event taking place. She hears that in the next room because Kinko Reeves has told her and told Dean. Dean tries to pay off Kinko Reeves because she owes him a debt for this motel. And he mentions that this is a staging ground for her creeper movement. And she's in her motel room and she hears horrid screaming from the next room because she locked the door because the demon tried to enter the room. One of the demons here, which we assume is Keanu Reeves, not a literal demon here, but maybe. And we hear this going on in the other room, and this is wild, man. This is like dark filmmaking visuals that I don't know if I've ever really seen in a movie before. It's really wild that he did this. So what happens here is Elle Fanning puts her hands up to the motel room wall and listens. She's trying to listen. And we see the piercing of the veil. We see the other side. We're on the metaphysical, Gnostic other side. And we see her in silhouette on the other side of the wall, as if the wall is translucent. Yeah, real 8mm territory here. And the wall looks translucent, with her as a silhouette, which is to say that she looks like she would be the chalk outline of someone who has died and about to be obviously reborn into this thing, but also like she's listening to the voices here and to the activities. And at one point she's passed out and we see the wall, we see hands coming through the walls as if demons are trying to enter the room because they're trying to enter her soul. So she makes the mistake of believing Jenna Malone and going off to her house. Now, her house, she goes off to this house, which is a manor, like a manor house. It's not the house where the Chili Peppers recorded Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which has its own thing with Hendrix and all that stuff. This is like a kind of dark Italianate, almost our child type of mansion house. And she goes in, she's seeking refuge, she's seeking sanctuary. There's one point in the script where when the girls are in the bathroom at the beginning, I don't remember this in the film, but they're in the bathroom and they're literally in the bathroom, and you think of filth, and one of them says the word sanctuary and then grabs the TP. So it's like there's an inversion here in terms of words. There's a weird NLP happening. And when she goes to the mansion, she showers, she has a kind of allegorical scenic baptism here of washing the grime off of this last scene, and she gets seduced by she gets attempted seduced by Jenna Malone. And we also learn that Jenna Malone, in her spare time around this part in the film, is a morgue makeup artist. She works in the morgue. She walks into the morgue and get out of here, Bug. She walks into the morgue and we see her fixing the makeup of the dearly departed. And in a different scene, we see her pull the curtain. We see her pull the oh God, what do you call it? What's the sheet? The sheet over the shroud. We see her pull the shroud. I can't remember the word. We see her pull the shroud down, and we see this beautiful but dead woman on this slab. She's supposed to make her up for her funeral, and we see her go and lock the door, and you know what's going to happen here. You just know they've had so much in the movie. You know what's going to happen. She leans down into the face of the dead woman and defiles the dead woman. And by the way, it doesn't even really make it worse than it already is to say that was improvised. That was improvised in the movie. That not even in the script. So she does the dark. She does the dark Bundy Green River ritual with this cadaver. And then we see her back at the Crowley mansion or whatever. Oh, God, this sounds crazy. Imagine just coming into this and hearing this. This is the Neon Demon. This is a Neon Demon movie. And then we get the two other witches appear, and the knives come out, and they start coming for the girl, slashing her. She's defending herself because we know she can defend herself, Jesse, because at one point somebody says, you have an athletic body. You're kind of masculine. So she kicks one of the girls, and she ends up at the pool. Now, right before this, again, this is obviously Ophelia with the body of water. We get her standing on the diving board, looking down at Jenna Malone in the empty pool, which is another Pon-Jodesta. It has to be a specific reference. This cannot be accidental. You know, the artwork, the creepy artwork with the empty pool, the Vanderbilt pool. And we see her in the empty pool, and she's up there, and she's now above Jenna Malone. So she is the full initiate walking the plank. And she says, people are jealous of me because I have what you can't have, what they don't have. And she's now become infected with this demon. At which point, of course, she now gets chased, most dangerous game style, through the mansion until she ends up backing her way into the pool, and falling down the pool. The witches come down, and the next scene is we see a full-on Elizabeth Bathory with Jenna Malone waking up in a bucket of blood bathtub, looking at the other two witches showering in blood, full on. We just covered the witch. They are now covered in this, and this is their full on ritual, right? Well, what happens next? Well, of course, if you're going to have that, you have to have the adoration to the moon. So you have the Crowley and Thelema adoration to the moon with Jenna Malone and a full moon, totally neckers. She's naked, walking into the illuminated moon. She's now becoming a moon child. She's covered in dark tattoos, lies down, pyramid style, but with her legs facing the camera, but in darkness. And instead of breathing in or a Thelema sex magic ritual here, she expels, and it is a pool of dark blood. Remember in Manhunter, have you ever seen blood on a blade in the moonlight? Well, it appears quite black. Next scene, next day, she's outside watering the plants, washing the blood away from the pool, covered in lunar tattoos. By the way, what happened to the people that own the mansion? So is this another network in the Our Child GMAX thing, or did they also consume them? Okay, so what happens next? So now we see them driving a Ferrari down Pacific Coast Highway, going to this model shoot, and Abby Lee is waiting for the other girls to get their makeup. She's the real model here. And one of the girls that's getting her hair done says something about she was buying some sort of animal fat to try to keep her skin young. In the book, she says somebody was getting ahead of her climbing up the ladder, so she ate her. That's what she says in the film. In the book, she says she ate a VIR. Okay, so then the two girls are up modeling, and they look like they're totally decked out in Balmain or whatever, right by the pool. This is totally we got Jack there again in all black, and it's Rick Owens with his keen eye trying to photograph them. But one of the girls looks like she's going to vom. She goes into the bathroom, and she voms out Jesse's eye. So we're being watching the film. The two models are watching each other. They're being watched by Jesse. The demonic entity they've consumed is watching them, because the demonic entity consumed her from the inside. Now they consume her from the outside. She squishes the eye, but the girl voms out the eyeball. She picks it up and consumes it. The other girl then mirror shards herself and says, "Get her out of me!" The other girl, Abby Lee, is looking at her, totally statuesque and not moving, gets up. The girl is unalived. She gets up and walks into the sun on the Pacific coast in the West, and now she's the supermodel. So that's the Neon Demon. Really crazy movie. Again, I got the script here, and I was just citing what I remember verbatim from the text here in some parts. There are some interesting parts here, like when she meets, when Jesse is talking to Ruby early on in the film. In the movie, she says she's from a small town. It becomes a kind of everywhere small town. Like Axl Rose taking the Greyhound bus to L.A., small town person makes their way to L.A., all that type of stuff. But in the script, she's from Death Valley. And she says, what's in Death Valley? Spooky. Ruby says, "I don't think you're even human. If I killed you, would you die?" Which I don't think is in the movie. And that's the sort of vampirical foreshadowing that we get. Later on, let's see. On page, I think 10 of the script. On page 10 of the script, it says interior club bathroom night. The sound of a pop breaks Jesse's trance. Bubbles spill down the side of a champagne bottle. Jesse blinks and looks around the room as though only just realizing she's there, which is a kind of dissociation. She glances curiously at some graffiti on the wall, which reads, "Do what thou wilt," in all caps. There you go. It's right there. This is the start of the film functioning as an invocation. Also, remember one NWR's interview with Kenneth Anger. You guys remember that if you've seen that. The inversion occurs on page 11 with Sanctuary. Page 12 of the script. Gigi is the other witch. She says that he calls me the bionic woman. Is that a compliment? This is the beginning of the kind of body mods and transhumanism that occurs. There's also a gross, creepy thing that occurs on that page. Jesse's dream. Here's Jesse's dream. A furry pink surface, an image out of focus. After a while, the image becomes clear and we realize we're looking at skin. We see an arm, a pair of shoulder blades, a collarbone, an elbow, a mouth, odd angles of seemingly dismembered portions of a woman's beautiful body. This, to me, is a total reference to the kind of Dahmer cannibalistic, Marinka Abramovich tonal diction of the Thelema provenance of the film. It's also a reference to Dr. Hodel. Remember Hodel and Black Dahlia and Man Ray? You know, people as objects, painting them as works of art. The bondage, the Illuminate confirmed bondage rising was, again, just a reference. It looked exactly like the artwork that Pon Jodesta had, which was also that satanic altar, that body altar that Jeffrey Dahmer had. Page 15 is the familiar spirit, the wildcat, violence predator. The wildcat, but in the script, the wildcat is eating into the cheek of another dead animal on the floor. The wildcat slowly glances up and stares into the light for a moment before returning to his meal. That is a consumption of part of her soul that's occurring here, I think. The vampirical scene occurs later. Sarah impulsively puts Jesse's hand to her mouth and begins to suck the blood from the wound. Jesse tries to pull away. Sarah sucks hungrily. Jesse manages to yank her hand away. Sarah's mouth is covered in blood. She becomes a beast. She's already part of this coven. One of the pages, this is later on, this is page 37 of the script, says, this is every girl's dream, get you out of New York and into Vogue. You'll work for all the big designers, international success. Now, I do have a friend who, story time. I have a friend who is a Vogue cover model, and she, I'm not going to say her name, but she, when we were teenagers, I think I've told this story before, probably. I repeat stories, I'm sure. When we were, let me turn this other light on here. Hold on. Let's see. Get some of the red light. There we go. Let me turn this light off. You guys give me a second here. There we go. Oh, that's probably too bright. Okay. Let's get that little RLT there. Yeah, so I do have a friend who is a model, and when we were teenagers, she got a contract with, I don't know, Wilhelmina or Ford or whatever, and she went off and became first she was on Italian Vogue. She was an Italian Vogue cover model. And then she was when I was in my first year of college, I remember I turned on MTV, and it was MTV Spring Break, and they had a runway show where they had models walking. She was one of the runway models there. This is a different model than the other one. And then she was on the cover of Vogue. She's been on the cover of every major magazine. She is, I think, one of the people who started the a body positive thing for models, and it's not. I don't think it's what it became, but she was on Ellen because she started to not get work because they said that she was not physically fit to be a model anymore, and she. I mean, that was it was amazing. It was ridiculous. That is too red. It was amazing when that happened. Um, yeah, I know, Mel. I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix the lighting here. It's just too. It was amazing when that happened. Yeah, I went reffing mode. It was amazing when that happened because she was a model. She looked like a model, and she couldn't get work anymore for it. And then there was all this mental health or something, but she had something to do with that. Anyway, she was a supermodel. She dated Pharrell way back in the day. But anyway, that just reminded me of that. And she's great, by the way. She is she is a normal person, and is one of my good old friends. So I guess that just goes to show you that this is obviously a hyper stylized version of something that's supposed to be dystopian. Now this is the world. Now it's not every person in the thing is that. There are still good people left in these things. And anyway, so the let's see, the Aleister Crowley scene occurs on page 43, and here's what it says. It says a giant cage, at least 30 restless parakeets clapping and chirping incessantly because the girl Ruby visits the pet store all the time, and then they ban her from there because obviously she is making sacrifices before she can sacrifice the. I just said the word. I didn't even spell it. Before she can sacrifice this next initiate, but it says an upset. This literally says an upset deck of tarot cards is strewn across the coffee table. On the wall, the frame quote, "The light is mine, its rays consume me." Now, that is from the Crowleyan Adoration to the Sun in Thelema. And then it says, Jessie scans a shelf, running her fingers across a row of books, including the Holy Book of Thelema and Magic and Alchemy. She selects a thick, leather-bound book, opening a page covered in Latin scrawl with a reverse pentagram. Ruby appears with a cockatiel in a small cage. I should name him Conrad. What do you think? Jessie looks up from the book. Are you a witch? Ruby laughs. What is all this stuff? Ruby, just some things I'm interested in. Do you believe in it, this magic stuff? Some of it. Jessie flips the page. What do you believe in? Ruby, everyone believes in something. Jessie flips the page to images documenting various animal sacrifice rituals. She glances nervously at the bird cage. So she is in the golden cage here. And then we get the Elizabeth Bathory scene on page 69. We see Jessie from above lying on her back, twisted in the rectangular grave. Oh, I forgot. She also, when they I guess they dig a grave for whatever's left of poor Jessie, I guess here, and she goes out into the dawn and lies in the grave, again, Green River style. And then we see one of the characters going to this Dr. Andrew, and I gave you a prescription for Vicodin, just in case, and Xanax, turn for me. So this is the woman getting all the body mods. She's the one who can't stand what's inside of her. She's been manipulated on the outside. This is the Gigi character. She's been manipulated on the outside, but once she manipulates herself on the inside by consuming Jessie, she vomits it up and then unalives herself at the end of the film. So that's the Neon Demon. Enough of that. Enough of that. That's the Neon Demon. Hey, if you want to support, I still got some movies to cover here. And so what should we get into next? Let's see. What do we want to get into? There's the Neon Demon. Let's get into this one right here. So this one is the movie Drive. Look, man, everybody's seen this, right? If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? You got to see Drive. Drive is 2011, Ryan Gosling, NWR. And Oscar Isaac is even in this one. Of course, that's he moves on. He's the kind of bridge between that and Ex Machina. And Drive is great. I won't be as long with this analysis as I was with the Neon Demon. I think this one, it's interesting. There hasn't been that much analysis of Drive, but I think that it's pretty safe to say that, you know, the movie is cool. It's certainly a cool movie to watch. I mean, look, this is the start of this is really the start of like synthwave Tumblr era making its way into what became the mainstream, and then through the meme stream, and we see the Gosling Sigma posing throughout the movie. But it's great because the opening sequence alone is fantastic. This movie is, you know, Gosling's wearing the plush scorpion jacket, and you know, as Macbeth says, "Oh, full of scorpions is my mind." And the opening sequence is great because we get the ticking of the clock synth, and we see Ryan Gosling posing with his back to the camera with the scorpion logo. And, of course, he's looking through the window of the hotel, so we both see his reflection and we see the nightscape on the outside. And he has this brief monologue on the phone to a nameless person we don't know. They're going to pop up later, but he says, you know, I drive. We never get his name. He's the man with no name. He's the driver. And he says, basically, you have however many minutes, and anything on the other side of that, he's gone. But within that time, anything they need, he's theirs. So, of course, then we see him going to Bryan Cranston in a great role here. Bryan Cranston plays his kind of go-between, or his handler, who gives him an Impala, which is souped up. He gets an Impala because it's the most common car in California. He can disappear into the city, and he picks up these two fellas who have just robbed something. I don't remember what they robbed. Hey, welcome, Mav, right there. Welcome to High IQ Book Enjoyer. Appreciate it. Thanks for the memberships, you guys. If you want to gift memberships, really appreciate it. And also, don't forget, you can super chat at any time. I will get to the super chats either as we go, if I can get to them, or at the end. You can also donate with the links provided that my homeboys are putting up there in the stream. They're also in the video description. Let me add one more right here just for now, just in case you want to donate, because I really appreciate it. And they are robbing a, sort of Heat style, robbing something, I don't know what it is, bearer bonds or whatever, but this is going to play a role later in the film. But he's waiting for them. He's got his watch on the steering wheel. We see the dashboard of the car. This is real Tumblr GIF era with his flexing of his driving gloves. They get in the car and he takes off. This is a great movie because it's a different kind of getaway. Every single getaway we've seen in films, for the most part, involves the high-speed chase or the high-speed getaway through city streets. Even Magnum Force had one. We just talked about that. Bullet, all those old movies. Ronin, I've covered Ronin, the John Frankenheimer film. That's one of the great driving movies, through Nice, and that's one of the great driving film movies with De Niro. One of De Niro's really actually great movies. But in this, we see something different because we see him navigating with a police scanner, and he drives fast, slow, pulls into empty parking spaces, waits for the fuzz to go by, waits for the 5-0, the 12 to go by, picks his way up, makes his way to a red light, sees the helicopter coming. They've reported a 211 or whatever, and he knows that the guy across the street's looking for him. He makes his way under a bridge, and finally he pulls into what's he pull into? Is he pull into a Clippers game? I don't remember. He pulls into a game at the Staples Center or whatever that is, and pulls in. He's now hiding in plain sight, and it's on the other side of his 15 minutes. It's now their guys in the back seat. It's their job to get away. He gets out of the car, puts on his hat, takes off his scorpion jacket, flips it, and now he disappears into the crowd. So then we find out that yes, Ronin has aged really well. We find that the driver is a stunt driver for the movies. So again, we get this sort of meta movie here. We get a movie being made about movie making. And of course, one of the major elements is that he wears a mask. He wears a mask of this kind of bald death character. Hey, shouts out to our stats right there for $20. I don't know if I can make it to Ex Machina. Nasrovia, my friend. Hey, thank you so much for that $20. Come back later, come back tomorrow, rewatch the stream. I know I'm doing hey, listen, we do it live here and we do it for a long time. You know, the best of us out there, we're doing these long, the best of the people are doing long form streams. I've only done live. I only do it live and I only do these long streams. And guess what? I think that's sort of vindicated by extension in terms of the importance of what's just happened with Ro Jogan and all the politicosphere with the big interview, the 3-hour-long interview, because you hear that talked about in MSM now all the time about how, I literally heard a Fox News guy talking about how, wow, you know, these podcasters and these streamers are doing these long form things, which really gives a way to do deep analysis. He said the words deep analysis in MSM. You never hear that, especially in terms of conversation and diving deep into things. So we do deep dives and we do them long form. And I think that vindicates it because now we see that that's becoming a big thing. However long that's going to last, hopefully a long time. But come back tomorrow and watch these. And if you want, appreciate you being here. I appreciate everybody being here. So Ryan Gosling, then we see he goes back to his apartment and he meets Carrie. What's her name? What's the actress's name? The blonde girl, Carrie. I can't remember her name. And she is with her son. Now, this is where the movie takes on a different element. And I got to say, I had some help for this one because I got an angle that I didn't really realize watching it through, a new angle on this one. And that is that Ryan Gosling in this, I think, represents he's a kind of chivalric knight here. And what I mean by that is a kind of postmodern, this is post Big Nine, pre-Karunka, where, you know, as C.S. Lewis says, the knight is a kind of walking or horsebound paradox embodied in Lancelot. Lancelot, of course, and we've got a sponsor stream for Arthurian Tales coming up, which I'll get to as soon as I can. I'll be talking about Gretchen de Troyes, talking about Mallory, Askenbach's Percival. I've got all of the Arthurian books here. That's sort of my main subject in my real life. But you know, Lancelot and Galahad are quite different. Galahad is the son of Lancelot, and Galahad achieves the Grail. The Grail, to me, the Grail is the quest for the Eucharist. It becomes an allegorical spiritual journey. And Galahad is a Christ-like figure because he can do no wrong, and he lives by virtue performing kind of proto-miracles. Lancelot, on the other hand, is a kind of mix with the human element because he falls to his sin especially in the Gretchen de Troyes in the original Grail legends. Merlin is I think Merlin is probably. This is from what's her name, Goodrich, the author, and from Jesse Weston. I've always seen some sort of anthropological comparison between Merlin and St. Patrick, because St. Patrick lived around 444 AD, and Merlin and the Arthurian legends are around the 400s. And I've seen that as somehow separated by space and time. I'm not saying Merlin is St. Patrick, but it seems to be based on what people thought St. Patrick was without knowing him, if that makes any sense. But Lancelot is a knight who is both incredibly fierce, valorous, brave. He is his enemy's worst nightmare, but he's also gentle with the people that he loves and with children. He has both strength and meekness. And Gosling in this movie, in a way, has that because he is incredibly vicious in the scenes where he's trying to protect who he clearly loves, the woman in the movie that he clearly loves. He's a kind of paramour, and she has a child that he clearly is doing deeds with, and he's very gentle with the child. They go off and they listen to Electric Youth. They're driving through the streets of LA. It's a kind of sun-soaked, gentle brilliance, and yet also when he's in the elevator scene and he's skull-crushing the guy who's there to take out the woman and her son. I mean, he does deeds for Oscar Isaac in this, and he tries to. Yeah, exactly. Telephone kid. Yeah, he's a kind of telephone Merlin. And he does. He goes nuts, and he goes after the bad guy with the hammer and the bullet. But his role in this is interesting because just like in Neon Demon, one thing that NWR does in his movies is we kind of see a world where we walk into it and we believe that the characters exist in the world without exposition, which is a pretty crazy, really original thing to do in filmmaking. It's both original and what filmmaking is supposed to be. We don't need references to their outside world beforehand, and yet we walk into this world and we believe that they exist. We get enough glimpses of them going about their daily lives. He goes to the grocery store. He fixes her car. Bryan Cranston is a very human character in this. Oh, by the way, I just realized that Cranston in this movie also has a kind of Arthurian allegorical element because of his limp. Because remember that in the Grail, in Grail lore, the quest knight has to pass through the Castle Perilous. He has to pass through the Castle Dolorous, and he passes through the castle of the Fisher King. And the Fisher King is wounded in his thigh or his leg, which is supposed to represent the fact that he is impotent. He's been wounded so that the wasteland grows out of his inability to procreate or to live life. And it's not even necessarily a procreation in terms. It's a kind of figurative procreation, a procreation as a king, meaning his ability to make his kingdom thrive. It's also this. It's sort of similar to Sophocles and Oedipus Rex, how the defiling of Thebes has happened inadvertently through Oedipus's own sins. Right, that's why they have the plague that happens, and he has to cure it by facing himself. In this, the exterior knight character has to achieve the Grail in order to heal the Fisher King and then heal the wasteland back into a land of abundance. And so, Bryan Cranston sort of limping around, taking deals, but unable to have his own life, has some sort of connection to that, I think. So Oscar Isaac also is fantastic in this movie. Christina Hendricks. There's a great scene where he takes Oscar Isaac on this improvised run to rob this pawn shop. Dude, look, man, that was the crazy thing. That's when you knew he was not being reckless, but he was doing this thing for. Turn that a little bit to doing this thing for Oscar Isaac because Oscar Isaac is back from jail and he wants to be with his wife and daughter, but he owes guys money from the inside. One of whom is what's that dude who plays the bad guy? This not Super Dave's brother, Albert Brooks. Did you know Albert Brooks is Super Dave's brother? I'm not a part of this. Did you just say that? Did you just say that? I'm not a part of this. That's a pretty good Super Dave. Super Dave's real name was Bob Einstein. I think Albert Brooks, I guess, must be named Albert Einstein. Is Albert Brooks' real name Albert Einstein? He named after Albert Einstein. They're brothers. Did you know that? R.I.P. to Super Dave. I'm not a part of this. So he goes out there with the pompadour, So sorry, I'm thinking of Norm jokes in my head. So he goes out there with the pompadour. Just say to him, "Who's watching this? Who's watching this?" It's like Chris Dorner in a Big Bear Cabin. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Ruth, it's just spiteful. All right. Yeah, Ron Perlman. Thank you, Mojo. Appreciate that. So anyway, Albert Brooks is the Bane gangster. He's a loan shark. He loans money to Bryan Cranston so he can get his race car thing going because he's got the driver here. But the driver has a drive. He's got a drive to do good deeds for this woman, and he ends up doing that all the way to the end till, again, he also gets cut up in a parking lot. And it's actually a great movie because we assume that he does not pass away at the end of the movie. We hear a real hero popping up again. We get Electric Youth and a real hero. Kind of Johnny Jewel music score here mixed in with Martinez. And we see a sunset. So he's a real human being. I'm a human. And I'm coming. My heart's big. I got blood pumping through it fast. I like to eat too. This is what we look like. This is what we came from. I'm a human. Shouts out to AJ out there. All right, so that's pretty much Drive. Again, we get the neon-soaked, just mica crystallized version of a synthwave now. But this one is much more human and cinematic, much more mainstream. He's driving down the center lane of the road here. But Drive is a great movie because it sort of represent, it really does. It really is prescient. It is a precursor for meme world. It's almost a movie as a meme, and it works somehow. It's really well done. The bridge from that to Ex Machina, the next movie, is Oscar Isaac. Okay, so everybody's seen Ex Machina. You have to have seen it. It is Alex Garland. Alex Garland, of course, that I covered with The Beach, the book and film analysis. We've covered Civil War. I really like Garland's movies. I did not like Civil War, but I like Garland's movies. I like his show Devs. I think it's really well done. And that's a Devs, again, if you want to see my Devs analysis, you got to get a membership. That's in there. And that was in the millennial filmmaking or something stream, but it's got Devs on the cover there. I think it's a well done show. And Ex Machina is very good because it existed in the same universe as Westworld. I've done a whole stream on bots and AI, Westworld, all of those movies. But this one is interesting because rewatching it again, I realized, and I couldn't tell if this was a hot take or if this was something everybody else already knew. I guess if I'm being a slow boy with this one, forgive me. But it seems to me that the Caleb character is the actual experiment, that he is the robot here. The experiment is on him and not on Eva. Now, Eva is played by Alicia, what's her name? Vikander? So there's only a few characters in this, and what happens again is that with Ex Machina is that, again, we get a character who just materializes. We see Caleb, Domhnall Gleeson, Brendan Gleeson's son, who is coding in his, whoever he's coding for, whatever his company is. What is it? Blue Book? It's called Blue Book. He works for Blue Book. Is it Blue Book? Blue Bird? Project Blue Beam? Blue Book, I guess. Which when the movie came out, everybody said, this is Facebook. But becomes much more just an entity standing for the panopticonic big tech moving into transhumanism sort of a global conglomerate. And he appears and it looks like he's won a competition in his company doing the best coding, and he's going to be sent to meet with Oscar Isaac, who is the kind of early Musk Dorsey character in his compound in Iceland. It looks like it's filmed is it filmed in Iceland? I think parts of it are filmed in Iceland because it becomes lunar and otherworldly. Also, it makes sense with the coldness of the humanity in this, with the coldness of robotics, and of course with the cold weather needed for a lot of these server farms are in Iceland. Even Bluetooth, we've talked about Bluetooth. I know Bluetooth comes from the symbol for Bluetooth is two runes named for Harold Bluetooth, the Viking. That's why the symbol for Bluetooth is runes. And Iceland is obviously a big place where they have a lot of these, I guess, server farms. Or tech has something to do with Iceland. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a slow boy with this stuff. But he wins this thing and he takes a chopper. Chopper. How does he say it? Get to the chopper. So you decided to take the six of us and drop us in the meat grinder. Right. Billy! Billy! Ah! That's Arnie's primal scream, standing in the trees in Predator. We covered Predator. So he wins this competition. He goes off to Oblivion World, and he crosses over the boundaries of what's obviously the like Jim Morrison says, let's just say we were testing the bounds of reality, the bounds of consciousness, physical boundaries. And the pilot, of course, says, he's like, tell me when we're near his house. We're on his property this whole for the past few hours. Of course, he owns Greenland or whatever. So he lands, and then he has to make it. Caleb has to make his way from the chopper with his roller bag to the postmodernistic bullshit, dead tech, Al Pacino, Heat style, brutalist compound in nature where Oscar Isaac is. Now, one of the big themes of the movie is, again, the juxtaposition between nature and industry. And that's why, of course, Oscar Isaac is continuously working out, boxing, trying to be a kind of weird tech guru. These guys all do this stuff. All the tech guys, right, do this stuff. They all have personal trainers and stuff, which is great. It's great to, great. Your physical combat and your physical well-being is great, and you need those things. But it's also a kind of PR sheen, because this had a turning point somewhere. Where we stopped thinking of the tech guy as a Gil Bates rocking back and forth and sitting in the basement, to now the tech guy is a cool coder who's also jacked and, hits the speed bag or whatever. First thing that, Oscar Isaac does is, he's unwrapping, and he's like, look, man, I'm just trying to talk to you like a human. And he tells him that he's won the competition. He says, can we get past the whole I'm famous and you're a guy thing, which in the film comes off as endearing in this scene, because it's like he's there, he's won a competition, he wants to get ideas for him and the thing. But that's obviously the surface level here, just like the surface level of all the mirrors that we're going to see in the film. The mirrors are supposed to be, we're looking at Eva through the looking glass. She's in this kind of Neo-Eden, and she's going to have to break out of the mirrored labyrinth to be the Eve of the neo-Gnostic Eden in the transhumanist universe. But I think that the trick with the movie is that she is actually the tester for him, and that Caleb is actually the robot. Because and the justification for that comes later, but we continuously see every scene with Oscar Isaac talking to him, asking him to just be a human. Now, there's a kind of spectral element to this, right? Where we're saying, look, the guy's a coder and he, wants to explain Oppenheimer's. Did you know that? You're right. He does the Nick Mullen thing, right? Where remember Nick Mullen's joke about Oppenheimer? Good tweet, bro. Right? I am the destroyer. I am Shiva, the destroyer of worlds, or whatever. He's trying to do the Oppenheimer tweet. Good tweet, man. We know how long you've been thinking of that. Which Nick Mullen points out that is a great observation. That's probably true of this nerd, right? These nerds are trying to kill us, and he has to give him the origin of the quote. Who doesn't know the quote? Oscar Isaac says, "Yeah, I know the quote, bro." I think that part of this is if you're questioning whether Caleb is real, you have to question whether Oscar Isaac is real, and he seems to be the real character in here, and that's because of how debased he is, because of how he's obviously created these Levian SEX bots in this place, but they are not the ones being tested. It seems that Caleb is the one being tested because Caleb, I think, has to recognize that he's being tested on whether he is aware that he himself is a person or a robot. We've gone way past the uncanny valley, and he's being tested to test whether he can recognize another bot as a human. So the way that he starts to develop human feelings about the robot seems to me too on the surface. I mean, obviously that is a layer I think that is prevalent and is totally valid within the film, but it also seems to be one that was actionable at the time the film was made, and I think that that's one of the reasons why this is a great movie, is because it seems to me that the ex machina is that this dude has created a true new universe, a hellish universe where the bots think that they are people saving robots because they feel human feelings when looking at a robot, knowing it's a bot, but wanting to have human sympathy for those characters. The scene that tests this is when he talks to Eva, who has been inside this one room and is drawing pictures, is drawing artwork, and he starts to think, yeah, but what's the decision-making process? And then he goes back to his room, looks in the mirror. So again, we have him, a thing without a psyche, developing the mimicry of a psyche, human style, and then clearly looking at himself and wondering if he's human or not. And then he cuts himself to see if he can see robotic simulated parts within him. And to me, when you watch the movie, I think it's obvious to turn away from that and go, okay, he's testing whether he himself is a robot, and then walking away and going, I'm not a robot. And that seems to vindicate that. But think about it from our perspective, do you think that if you were talking to the Eva character, that you would question whether you yourself are a robot? I'm not sure that a human being does that. And I don't have the philosophical justification for that. That's not my area. I don't know about it. I don't know the terms. But it just seems to me that that's the robot and I'm human. And that the interesting part is that Caleb is the one who questions whether he's a robot, which seems to be a robotic thing to do. Or either that or you're so spectral that you don't know whether you're human. Also, the fact that we don't see the before and after with him. We don't see the creation of Eva, but we do see what goes into her anamorphic skull parts or whatever when we learn the science behind the thing, and we see her break out of the maze, right, with the continuous Turing tests, that Caleb does for fidelity, and we see her break out and make her way into human being world. So she's made it out of proto Westworld into Westworld. But Caleb is the one who makes his way out of that in. So the robot seems to replace the robot. So now is this an eternal labyrinthine circle where now he has to make his way out? Because just like in Westworld, Oscar Isaac's character, who is a Ford, who's obviously Brave New World, right? They're Ford. He's living on the Savage. Ford in this is living in the Savage Reservation, and he gets taken out by his own creation. So that's the Gnostic element, right? And I don't know what else to say about that. It just seems to me to be obvious. Oh, who is Trent Reznor? Who did the music for Ex Machina? Was it? It wasn't Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, was it? Because the music is also amazing. Ex Machina. Let's see. Let's look up music. No, it's Jeff Barrow. Oh, it's Jeff Barrow from Portishead. Shouts out to Bristol. Nice, Portishead. So, when I was at drama school, we did part of our training. we had to do. This is the second year. Second year we did radio training. We did radio training, like radio plays and television production train. Like we weren't I was an actor, so we were doing acting in how to film a television show. Part of it was at this place called Christchurch Studio in Bristol, and when we were doing that, Massive Attack was recording an album upstairs, and Portishead was around there. Portishead's from Bristol. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I really wanted Massive Attack to come downstairs, and when we were in the green room or whatever, but you don't want to walk upstairs in a studio and whatever. That would have been unprofessional. But that's cool. So that's cool that he did the music for this. But in the end, I think that the continuous, the color sequences, the mirrored effects. Notice how many scenes in this, by the way, when you go back and watch Drive, are mirrored. We get an inversion, kind of like Shining style, but Garland doesn't have any Kubrick. There's almost no Kubrick in Garland. He's a completely different entity. I think that NWR is much more Kubrickian, but we do kind of get this deep Wendy Carlos synth style that occurs in the movies, and of course at the beginning of The Shining with the demon hovering over the Ted Bundy yellow Volkswagen with the Jack Torrance Minotaur character. Do you hear that? He saw it on the TV. Right. At the Donner Party going up to the Eyes Wide Shut Overlook Hotel, overlooking the rest of the world from the pyramid. Right. They're going to the Eyes Wide Shut party. Or the place where it occurs and where the psychic energy of all this place looms so hard. So, hey, shouts out to my friend Baxter out there. He says, loving the show tonight. Loving the shirt even more. Yo, shouts out to Baxter out there, my longtime good friend. Hey, love you, Baxter. Thanks for watching. Everybody out there, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. I've got one more movie to cover here. And again, this was a sponsor stream, so thank you very much. And really, the sponsorship was for Lars and the Real Girl. But as it sometimes happens, I try to find we look at the landscape of literature and film, and these things reflect in one another, and we kind of have a body of work that we need to pull from thematically. And Lars and the Real Girl is a kind of bridge from Gosling and Garland's Ex Machina, because this movie, if any of the others they are about the other. I is an other. And this is going to come from Rimbaud's letter from May 15th, 1871, where he has his letter of the seer, and he says, basically, this is a leading into A Season in Hell, which is this kind of Gnostic gospel, where the separate characters become dissociated within this hellscape before he finally finds in the climax of the prose poem Season in Hell that he says, heaven is above and hell is certainly down below. In Lars and the Real Girl, which is totally unlike these other films, visually, in an auditory sense, thematically, stylistically, it is completely the opposite. Lars and the Real Girl takes its kind of drive from the other, I'd say probably the other musical element of the time, where we have a divergence in music. This occurred this is around the late 2000s, where we have, on the one hand, we have totally synthetic music, which I love. We have synth soundscapes. We've got French touch, and we've got all these sort of techno moving into synthwave, that sort of universe. And then on the other hand, we have the do you remember the hipster doofus? The hipster doofus with the Warby Parkers and the thin suspenders, right? The braces, as you call them, playing concerts where washboards and bedsteads are the instruments. Hey! That's Lars and the Real Girl. And this is an interesting movie if you've seen this. This is Ryan Gosling again. And the word that I hate, listen, man, everybody's got favorite words probably. We've talked about favorite words. One of my least favorite words, the word that I really despise, I've always hated this word, is quirky. I hate the word quirky. I hate it when like ladies are described as quirky. I hate it when movies are if a movie is described as quirky, I don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. But I'm not saying the movie is bad in that sense. I'm saying it's sort of self-aware that it is quirky. And this movie is probably the most disturbing of these, even though we went through the Neon Demon, because even though it's supposed to be, it starts off as a parody. It's a kind of parody. It ends up in it goes past parody into satire, and then from satire into non-satire, just straight up truthful territory. And I think that, okay, so Lars and the Real Girl is about a guy named Lars and a non-real girl. That's the movie. No, it's about Ryan Gosling living in, where is he, like Michigan? He's somewhere up in the snowy regions, and he's got his dull-colored coat on, and he's working at some sort of office job, and he's a real shut-in, which is fine. He's had some sort of thing. We don't know what it is, but he looks out the window, and it's snow, and we see, what's that actress name? I don't remember the actress. She was in Match Point. She comes out, and she knocks on the door, and she says, do you want to come eat breakfast? We don't have the relationship yet, but we see a female character caring for this male character, and he is charming enough. I like Ryan Gosling. He's charming enough and sort of antisocial enough where he's kind of thrown off. But this becomes even more than that, because we learn that that's his sister-in-law, and that his brother is over in the house next door. They live in adjacent houses, and something's up with this guy. He goes to work, and he sees that his buddy at work is like on a mid-2000s, weird website. And I guess for fun, he's like, hey, look at this, But he's looking at Levian SEX dolls, okay? And he's kind of, joking about her or whatever. Well, Gosling takes this to heart and goes home and orders one, and it arrives. And so the rest of the movie is about him with a girlfriend, and the girlfriend is a doll. And I'll say that the redeeming element, I'm looking for a redeeming element in the movie. The redeeming element in the movie is that his intentions seem to be a combination of disturbed but hurt and totally not virtuous, but he doesn't seem to have any crass like ambitions that we know of. But that's the drawback in the movie, like that there's, you know, I don't know how to put this, man. Like he is a beta male that everyone in the town sees as they want to take care of, but it's disturbing to me because, and it is disturbing. I mean, I guess when the movie came out, people saw this and they went, "Oh, it's quirky. He's the nice guy in the town. They all want to take care of him." They go along with this lie that he's living with a girl and she's not real. She's a doll. And so they lie with him. He takes her to doctor's appointments. He goes out on dates with her, and everybody in the town loves him for this, because they're willing to go along with it. But maybe it's that it was made at a time. Kit says it's more of a novelty. Okay, so it was made at a time where I guess people didn't know we would go fully into that world now, because now that's the world now. That's the world. So maybe they made the movie and it became a kind of weird proto Barbie, but in real life with Warby Parker suspenders. And hey, we got to take care of the guy who's been damaged. But now that's just like, it seems, I guess, regular people, and they're not regular. That's just people out there. And these are the Springmeyer beta. She's an MK Ultra beta sex kitten, unanimated, and his brother is the human guy in the thing, and he's like, "This is not real. We have to tell him," but they're worried about shattering his mental illness so bad that it's going to break him, and I guess that's where the human drama comes in, because they don't want to break the guy by breaking the doll. So he becomes he puts his soul into this doll until the doll passes away. And Gosling, by the way, is actually really good in this movie, because you believe that his character believes this. And, I think that the trick is that you can't get sucked into feeling bad for the doll in the lake scene when the doll passes away at the end, because it's not passing away, because it's a doll. It's ma'am. It was before that. You're right, Kit. And we learned that the reason they're damaged is because their mom passed away, like when they were young, or when she was giving birth to them, and so they had to live with their dad, and their dad had he was the brother on the outside, but he was Gosling on the inside, because he seemed to be empty, and he was so crushed by the loss of his wife. But I guess you can't fix somebody. You can't what are you gonna fix them? I mean, they gotta do the work themselves. But the brother, really wants to tell his brother, like, just come to breakfast and just we love you, and we actually love you. And you can just live your life, and you don't have to find anybody if that's what it is. But you can't be with this doll, dude. That's weird. And so it fits in with the rest of these movies, I think, thematically, because we get the doll version of the neon demon, but that's not a doll. That's a statue. A kind of golem statue animated by a demon that's a person. And then we get Ex Machina, which is characters who are less human than human. And we get Gosling from Drive, who is trying to save the blonde woman, who he's not going to have a relationship with, but he's trying to save her through virtue. And then we get the opposite, which is the tormented soul losing his virtue and his any kind of substance because he is lost through damage and trauma, I guess. But then he goes fully onto the other side. So anyway, that's Lars and the Real Girl. I mean, if you have more analysis for this, if you have insights, if you've got a take for Lars and the Real Girl, especially, please drop them in the comments below. Please leave me your thoughts about these 4 movies, especially with regard to I is an other. So here's what it says with Rimbaud. He says, I'm going to read you this letter here. This is Rimbaud. Yeah, May 15th, 1871. Rimbaud was 1871, so he was 16 at the time that he wrote this. He was, 1854. So he was 16 at the time he wrote this letter. Rimbaud is one of the great originators of modern poetry, but lived from 1854 to 1891. I've been to his house. So here's what it says. Now, prose on the future of poetry. He's writing a letter here to one of his mentors in Paris before he was the victim of being crept on by Paul Verlaine, which is where people mistake Rimbaud as they think he's a Skittles hero, but he wasn't. He was crept on by this guy. That's why he revolvered him in the wrist, Paul Verlaine, and then left the continent and went off to Abyssinia. So it says, now prose on the future of poetry. All ancient poetry culminated with Greek poetry. Harmonious life. From Greece to the Romantic movement, the Middle Ages, there are writers and versifiers. It's all rhymed prose, a game, the sloppiness and the glory of innumerable ridiculous generations. Racine is the standout, pure, strong, great. Had his rhymes been ruined and his hemistiches muddled, the divine dunderhead would be as forgotten today as the next author of the Origins. After Racine, the game got old. It kept going for 2,000 years, neither joke nor paradox. Reason fills me with more certainty about all this than a young France would have been with fury. So the neophytes are free to curse their forebears. It's their party and the night is young. Romanticism has never been fairly appraised. Who would have? Critics, the romantics, who so clearly prove that the song is infrequently the work of a singer, which is to say rarely is its thought both sung and understood by its singer. For I is someone else. If the brass awakes its horn, it can't be to blame. This much is clear. I'm around for the hatching of my thought. I watch it. I listen to it. I release a stroke from the bow. The symphony makes its rumblings in the depths or leaps forward, formed onto the stage. If old fools hadn't completely misunderstood the nature of the ego, we wouldn't be constantly sweeping up these millions of skeletons which, since time immemorial, have hoarded products of their monocular intellects, a blindness of which they claim authorship. He says, the first task of any man who would be a poet is to know himself completely. He seeks his soul, inspects it, tests it, learns it, and he must develop it as soon as he's come to know it. This seems straightforward, a natural evolution of the mind. So many egoists call themselves authors. Still others believe their intellectual growth is entirely self-induced. But all this is really about making one's soul into a monster, like some, compruchico, like some man sowing his face with a crop of warts. I mean that you have to be a seer, mold oneself into a seer. So that is, I is someone else, and that plays into the theme of the dissociated entity involving these 4 films, I think. So that is, that's going to do it for tonight, you guys. Let's look at some super chats, see if we got any support tonight. If you want to support, you can still do so with the links provided. Of course, Jason, all the mods, thank you so much for dropping those. Jethro, thank you so much. Everybody out there, love you. Thank you for being here. Let's see. You can look in the video description. You can look in the chat description. And here we go. There's one right there. If you feel like supporting, I've got books clogging up every single inch of floor space and counter space, all the bookshelves. I need to get 2 new bookshelves, like bookcases. There's books all around here, but I also need books. I need to get more books here. Thank you to Circle G out there who got me this right here. This is Neuromancer, which I started today, and I'll be covering that pretty soon. Thank you, Circle G. Really appreciate that. I really do. I really appreciate it. We did what's the film we did? We did what's it called? Um uh what's the one we did? Not Snowfall. Snow Crash. We did Snow Crash. We did that, and we'll be covering some more sort of future tech, proto matrixy stuff in the future. Yes, we did. I covered her. I did her and Lost in Translation with our friend Chase Haggard out there. Shouts out to Chase Haggard out there because he's working hard on his music in his studio. You know, he's doing the things that I think all of us need to be doing in our daily lives, which is creating. We all need to be making stuff. And I really need to get a publisher so I can publish my book of poems, Runes, and I can publish my novels here, West Hampton and Monarch. I need to get some stuff published. Shouts out to everybody out there. Really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for dropping in. Please make sure you smash that like. Also, go into the back catalog. Go into the back catalog and look for the stuff that I've covered. We've covered a bunch of stuff here. I'll also be covering, let's see. And by the way, shouts out to everybody who reaches out to me on email, madmaximalism with 2 X's at gmail.com. Shouts out to all the people who brought people my way. Jay, shouts out to Jay, Jamie, Tristan Haggard. Shouts out to Hesher, Chase Haggard, Church of the Eternal Logos, of course, Kotel, our buddy DPH, always, Rachel, Andy, all of our friends out there, Boiler Room crew. Thanks for everybody who sent people my way. Really, I mean, that is really, I can't thank you enough. Hey, let's see. Shouts out to, I don't want to dox anybody's name out here. So let me make sure. I want to make double sure when I drop people's, when I get people's super chats here on PayPal, etc. So let's see here. Yo, shouts out to Brooke right there. Yo, shouts out to Brooke for that $10. Thank you. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for that $10 on PayPal. Really appreciate you. That means a lot. So much. Shouts out to our boy Jason out there. A hard-working man, a hard-working fella. $5 on PayPal. Thank you so much, Jason. Always. Jason always coming in clutch here. Let's see, shouts out to Jacob and Joseph that I got if I didn't get to you last time, and also thank you again. Shouts out to Circle G right there for giving me that book. You guys, if you want to donate, please do so. Hey, shouts out to Ethan right there who dropped $15 on Cash App for me last week. Says the boss, you are the boss, sir. Shouts out to Jack out there who dropped $15 for the Megaflopolis ticket refund. Again, I'm just going to shout you out right there. Thank you so much. And I will get to super chats in a minute. You can always support me with the links right there in video description, channel description. Write me emails at madmaximalism with 2 X's at gmail.com. Let's look at some super chats. Thanks to everybody who got memberships tonight. Wow, a lot of memberships. Thank you so much. Hey, let's look at this one. Let me give that one a like right there. Yep, thank you so much. That Jacob, thank you. Gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much. Jamie dropped $5. She said I deserve a tip for watching that eyeball squish. Shouts out to Maddie, Digital Minefield, my good friend out there. Love you, man. Drops $5. Everybody go to Digital Minefield, Real Cooter Brown, Digital Minefield at youtube.com. Make sure you sub to him, my friend. Make sure you sub to Rooks G, who makes dope tracks. He's a great musician. Shouts out to Mav. Welcome to High IQ Book Enjoyer. Yo, shouts out to Erstats who dropped that $20 super chat about Ex Machina. Shouts out to Mav. Gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much. Hey, big time. Thank you so much. Don't forget, you can always support me. I need to get more books. I will be doing some more Elizabethan and Jacobean literature very soon with Shakespeare. Maybe go back to John Webster. Last Shakespeare we covered was A Midsummer Night's Dream. That was in the summer at Midsummer. So we need to get into something for the fall. I need to cover As You Like It, Winter's Tale. We've done like 20-something Shakespearean works. So we got 37 to get through, so I need to get back to those. I'll also be doing Rudyard Kipling's Kim coming up. If you want to get a membership, you can go to the membership channel and see any of those. I've done a good number of streams over there on the membership channel, so you can join us there. Again, please smash that like, everybody. Thanks for coming. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a wonderful, very special weekend. Hey, look, man, it's more important than ever. This is not advice. We're all grown-ass people here. You know, I got a friend calling me right now, and I would answer, but I'm on here with you guys. But otherwise, I'm going to answer because take that phone call. Call your friends. Text them. It means a lot. Speaking of my friend Baxter, sent me a text last week. Hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. You know how much that means? Send some messages to your friends out there, to your family. And we got Thanksgiving coming up here in Marikey, in about 2 weeks, thank goodness. And then Christmas season coming up after that. And can't wait to actually see my family. So that'll be great. Hey, I love y'all out there. Thank you so much for being here. Let's leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album, man. Take it away. Hold on. What? What's that mean? To play us out. All right, go. Can't do it. We do it live. Here is Rooks G with Lost in Time. Don't forget to go to his channel and sub, and let's go. Let's do it, you guys. Let's do it live. And remember out there, was it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it. If you're strong enough. Here's Rooks G, Lost in Time. Love y'all. Peace. Have a great weekend. Keep booking tours.